The hour, we spend the final few minutes of Daybreak with Pastor Mark Ledbetter of Wesley Chapel Methodist Church. And Pastor Mark, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us on a Friday morning, a busy Friday morning. I've been wanting to get with you on this, the Israeli-Hamas conflict and how it ties with the college campus unrest that we're seeing in America, including even here in Alabama. I want to talk about that this morning.
Sure. You have to be under a rock not to know something's going on, and presently there's over 100 campuses that are experiencing this protest, as they're referring to. It started with Columbia University, and it kind of sprung out and went from campus to campus. There's over 100 campuses that have tents, encampments. There's several that had protests without the continued physical.
What's it about?
We know on October 7th, 2023, Hamas crossed the border into Israeli territory, and over 1,000 people were killed and over 250 were taken hostages. Israel responded not out of revenge, but out of a desire to remove a long-term nemesis, Hamas, which is actually a terrorist group that began back in mid-2000s, or 1987 actually. And so the response has been overwhelming, destruction of infrastructure. We have information of casualties, a little bit of disinformation because of if we can trust the reports we're hearing, that does not include the fact that that includes some of the Hamas warriors. It does not include the fact that Hamas has historically used human shields and placed them in strategic locations where they have their military infrastructures, and the consequences are indeed tragic.
No matter Mark, this is not new, is it?
No, sir. This has a history going back throughout the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It goes back even before 1948, when Israel was declared independence, the UN partition plan in 47. When Israel declared itself a nation in 48, they were immediately attacked by 7 Arab nations. Israel won that conflict, and since then there's been several other conflicts. 1952, the Suez Canal incident, and then there's 1967, the Six-Day War, and then 73, and there's been subsequent skirmishes, if you want to call it that, since then. And then you've had Intifada, which means uprising, which Israel's experienced terrorist events. If you can remember the bus bombings that took place, and there was a saying, it was so frequent, there was a saying that kids would wake up in the morning and want to know if it's safe to go to school. Yeah. So this has been ongoing. This is part of Hamas's plan. It's part of their charter, and that is to eradicate Israel from the land. Their invasion was hoping to rally other Arab nations to their cause. It didn't happen. So what has happened is, through the media and so forth, a plan became the catalyst for this protest. A lot of allegations against Israel, but this is nothing new. It took place in 2000s because of the cause of what they call divestment. This is part of the boycott, divestment, and sanction program that began, and that's what they're calling for today. They called for it in the mid-2000s. It all began with Columbia University.
So why is it catching on so much now?
I would say the seeds were planted and already organizations were in place, and I would suggest that there was a plan because usually the plan is to seize opportunities that arise to initiate these organized protests.
So where do you see this going?
It's hard to tell. I'm not a prophet at this point. I am like a weatherman. I'm forecasting what's the possibilities on things taking place. There's no easy resolution to the conflict. They want to end to it, but there's more than that. Because when you hear the protests on these college campuses, they're not just simply calling for divestment. They're calling for intifada, which is uprising, which that uprising is designed to eliminate Israel altogether. So this is going to be an ongoing saga. If this is resolved, there will be another incident down the road that will cause this global uprise directing people, nations against Israel. It may not be universal in the United States, obviously, but there's a significant number that has caused this unrest.
Yeah, I've seen, I saw they've basically shut down Columbia University.
Yes, they've suspended classes for the rest of the semester as they have at other campuses. Classes have been disrupted. There's been physical altercations launched against the Jewish students. The American flag has been replaced by a Palestinian flag, and then that escalated some confrontations. There's been multiple arrests, hundreds of arrests, because when you lose your civility, you have to pay the consequences. This is really tragic. It's not uncommon in the American scene. It's in our DNA. Because if you study the history of civil unrest since 1850, you'll see that there are patterns of civil unrest. 1919 in particular, there was, right after the war, there was civil unrest. And then in the 60s, in 67 alone, there were 159 riots in 1967, the long hot summer, they have called it. So protest is part of the American way because we're supposed to have the right of free assembly and freedom of speech. But when you go beyond that and begin to incite violence.
And you see that happening every day now here in our country.
The last decade, we should not be surprised, maybe we're alarmed, but not surprised that this has been ongoing since mid-2015 and forward even to the day. There has been 40, what's 40 plus 14? 54 incidents that's taken place, and many of them have been violent over a variety of issues. The issues, frankly, even this issue is a race issue, and there's been economic issues, and these are the two core catalysts for these protests in American history. It's beyond our borders, obviously, but it's not as intense as it is in the United States, and part of that's because they object to the administration's policy of supporting Israel, and they just want that to stop altogether. And that's where the divestment comes in. They don't want college campuses to continue in an economic relationship with corporations that are in line with Israel in their economic policies and production. It's always going to be a issue. It's going to be something. If it's not this, it'll be something else. If Israel has put forth a plan for a ceasefire, it's in the hands of Hamas to accept it. But this has been the history of this relationship between Israel and the Palestinians. They always reject unless they can find some advantage. And part of the advantage when Ariel Sharon conceded the West Bank and Gaza, Part of the plan is to establish a stronghold from which they can launch
Okay.
their attacks.
All right. Something to watch for sure, and something to pray about for sure.
Yes, sir.
15 seconds, what do we need to do? Pray, 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 I guess.
Absolutely pray and understand. Get the facts.
That was
Thank
good.
you. Thank you.
Brother Mark Ledbetter, pastor of Wesley Chapel Methodist Church in Sylacauga, our guest this morning.